Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 2025 Ordinary Council meeting. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their elders past and present. I would like to advise everyone that the audio and video of this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube. I request everyone to please turn off your mobile phones. I remind you that any recording of the meeting proceedings and photography within the chamber is prohibited unless prior approval has been granted, and councillors and city officers are reminded to disclose any declarations of financial interests and interests affecting impartiality and are requested to activate their microphones when addressing the meeting. So, with that, we move to item 1, which is the declaration of opening. I declare this meeting open at 1 minute past 6 p.m. Attendance by electronic means. Councillor Bronwyn Moore has requested to attend tonight's meeting via audio link. So, in accordance with Regulation 14C and 14A of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, I've authorised Councillor Moore to attend the meeting by electronic means. Councillor Moore, in accordance with Regulation 14C, Sub-Regulation 5 of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, can you maintain confidentiality during the meeting and when the meeting goes behind closed doors?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Okay, that brings us to item 2, which is a disclaimer. The City of South Perth disclaims any liability for any loss arising from any person or body relying on any statement, discussion, recommendation or decision made during this meeting. Item 3 is announcements from the presiding member. That's me. So, councillors, at this stage of the agenda, I'm obliged to present this month's mayoral report. For those members of the gallery or those who might be listening tonight, Council passed a motion at the October 2024 Ordinary Council meeting. That motion resolved that at each Ordinary Council meeting, I will present a report of the mayoral engagements and meetings attended by me in my capacity as mayor since the last council meeting. And the reasons in support of that motion stated that this practice is considered essential for maintaining transparency, fairness and accountability, allowing both councillors and the community to be fully informed of the mayor's activities and enabling them to participate more effectively in council deliberations, end quote. So the first part of the report that I'm required to present is a summary of the events attended and persons met with by me in my capacity as mayor since the last council meeting. And councillors, the last council meeting was held on Tuesday the 25th of March. So in accordance with council resolution, I'll begin from Wednesday the 26th of March. So on Wednesday the 26th of March, I attended a councillor briefing to receive an update on the Perth Hockey Stadium being built at Curtin University. The briefing was presented by the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries, and was also attended by the CEO of Hockey WA. On Monday the 31st of March, I met with the City's CEO and the City's communications team. As you all know, I meet with the City's CEO and the City's communication team once per week to discuss current and upcoming communications by the City, potential third-party media relevant to the City, and my duties as spokesperson for the City. And in an effort to try and reduce the length of this report, I'll note that I also met with the City CEO and the City's communications team on the 10th of April, the 14th of April, and today for the same purpose. On Tuesday, the 1st of April, I met up with the president of Como Bowling Club, John McGrath. As many of you know, I try and make myself available to the various sporting clubs and community organisations in our city to understand their needs and gain a perspective on what the city might be able to do to help make our district a better place to live, work and play. I also put in an appearance at the 10th birthday celebrations of local business Actus in their offices in Charles Street, South Perth, before attending the first budget workshop with councillors and city officers back here at the City. On Thursday, the 3rd of April, I attended a home Karrawara community dinner at George Burnett Leisure Centre and shared a meal with local residents there. And on Friday, the 4th of April, I met with local business owner Bei Yao and referred him on to Director Shaw about some statutory planning queries that he had. On the same day, Sarah Pope from the city's communication team and I attended a photo and video shoot with the federal candidate for Swan, Mick Fells. The photo and video shoot was in relation to a Liberal Party election commitment of $500,000 to enhance lighting along the South Perth foreshore and a further $1 million election commitment to upgrade the Coode Street playground. On Saturday, the 5th of April, I attended the River Guardians Festival hosted by the City of South Perth on the South Perth foreshore. It was really pleasing to see such a great turnout at the event, and I very much enjoyed engaging with the visiting mayors and presidents, taking in some of the informative presentations and catching up with members of our community. On Monday, the 14th of April, I met with Lainey Weiser and some very talented students from Como Secondary College. Lainey Weiser is the founder of Just Start It, which is a startup-focused high school program teaching students how to create their own tech startups. Students are encouraged and trained to become the next generation of job creators, utilising technology to optimise their solutions and disrupt current industry practice. I've had the pleasure of helping out as an industry contact and a panel judge for a few years now, and it was a delight to meet these exceptional young ladies and facilitate a couple of introductions that might prove useful for their project. Same day, in the evening, I attended a councillor briefing concerning the city's urban greening strategy and waste collection services. On Tuesday, the 15th of April, I attended the South Perth Senior Citizens Easter lunch. I try to drop in at both of our senior citizen centres every now and then to stay abreast on relevant issues and to make myself available to our community. I also met with the city's acting CEO, Mr. Gary Adams, as part of our ongoing weekly meetings. As you all know, I meet with the CEO, or in this case the acting CEO, at least once a week to discuss the local government's affairs and the performance of its functions in line with Section 2.8 of the Local Government Act. And once again, in an effort to try and reduce the length of this report, I'll also note that I met with the acting CEO again today for the same purpose. Same day, that evening, I served as the presiding member at the April Council Agenda briefing. On Wednesday, the 16th of April, the family and I attended the Manning Bike Track Community Open Day, along with a great many members of our local community. Attendees enjoyed a sausage sizzle, ice creams and interactive bike jam sessions to learn new skills, as well as complimentary bike maintenance and safety checks, kids' activities and more. It's a genuine pleasure to see our community enjoying this great new addition to our district. Same day, later on, I met with a member of our community who wanted to speak with me about a range of issues, including the city's waste management practices and the city's sporting facilities. And that evening, I served as presiding member at a CEO selection committee meeting. On Monday, the 21st of April, I met with Councillor Jennifer Navard to discuss council affairs. We met at local business Hoopla in Kensington, and that brings us up to tonight's ordinary council meeting. The second part of Council's resolution requires me to present an overview of the key issues, initiatives and matters that I've been addressing in my capacity as Mayor since the last council meeting. And you're all already aware of this, of course, but the main issues I've been working on since the last council meeting are: number one, how elected members can work better with each other and with the city administration to deliver on our community's priorities; and number two, ensuring that the process for recruiting and appointing the city's new CEO is managed properly. And with that, we are up to date. That brings us to item 4, which is attendances. Item 4.1 is apologies. I haven't received any apologies for this evening. Item 4.2 is approved leaves of absence, and Councillor Hayley Prendeville has an approved leave of absence for the period of 17 April 2025 to 23 April 2025 inclusive. Item 5 is declarations of interest. Bear with me, we've got a few. Councillor Mary Choi has declared an indirect financial interest in item 10.1.1 as the current and proposed ongoing tenants of the leased premises, SoCo Realty, are and/or have been the managing agents for various investment properties owned by my and extended family members. Councillor Jennifer Navard has declared a proximity interest in item 10.3.3 as my house is across a road from a section of Sir James Mitchell Park included in consideration in item 10.3.3. Councillor Mary Choi has declared an impartiality interest in item 10.5.1 as, aside from having a common interest with others in the district in that I have a verge tree and other properties I am or may have a beneficial interest in may also have verge trees, there are landowners or residents with not only verge trees but trees located in close proximity to land that is vested or managed by the city that are or may be known to me. Mayor Greg Milner, that's me. I've declared an impartiality interest in item 10.5.2 as I've previously served on the board of an organisation that has engaged one of the applicants for the role of recruitment consultant. Councillors, does anyone else have any interests that they'd wish to declare this evening? Councillor Waugh?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right, I'll take that as a no from everyone then. Item 6 is public question time. Item 6.1 is responses to previous public questions taken on notice, that is nil. Item 6.2 is public question time. So we now open public question time at 12 minutes past 6. We've received 2 written submissions prior to tonight's meeting. So I'd like to begin by inviting Mr John Santle of Salter Point. If you'd like to come to the microphone, welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
Thanks for having me again. The preamble, sorry, my wife and myself wish to ask about discrepancies in the agenda development proposal, which was for the group dwelling lot 4, number 7, Salter Point Parade, regarding mainly the obstructions of significant views. Question 1 to the council or its officers, could they please explain why the 2 houses, which is 78 and 80, we live in 78 Riverway, which are only 3 metres apart and behind the proposed dwelling, have different assessments on the loss of significant views. As in number 80 Riverway, which has their habitable room, the floor, is actually 1.2 metres below our habitable floor. Yes, they do have a higher floor, which is the bedroom, which is, won't be obstructed. But the number 80 Riverway, according to the proposal, has, and I quote, no compromised obstructions of views. Whilst our house, 78 Riverway, again, which is 1.2 metres higher level than the balcony of the house that has no obstructions, I quote, will lose approximately half of their views from our habitable floor. And I'm a bit bemused how that can be. If someone could actually explain how this is calculated. Did they go? They didn't go out on site.
Might be one question at a time, Mr Santle. Just to summarise, what's your first question?
It is actually why 78 Riverway, which have a higher habitable floor, is losing half its view, whereas 80, which is 1.2 metres lower, their habitable floor, has no obstruction of the proposed dwelling.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. The report does not state that number 78 Riverway will lose approximately half of their views. It states that it is considered that approximately half of the potential vertical viewing angle towards the Canning River will be maintained over the remainder of the dwelling. The city estimates that the dwelling may obstruct half of the potential vertical viewing angle to the Canning River, meaning that if there were no obstructions between number 78 Riverway and the Canning River, it would lose approximately half of its views. However, this is not the case, as there are a considerable number of obstructions between the Canning River and number 78 Riverway. There are a number of factors which determine the impact of an obstruction on river views, including the distance between the viewer, obstruction, and river, as well as relative heights of these locations. Where there is a lesser distance between the viewer and the obstruction, it will enable a steeper sightline towards the river and therefore less obstruction. Similarly, if a viewer is situated higher relative to the obstruction, it will also enable a steeper sightline towards the river and therefore lesser obstruction. The viewpoints at number 78 Riverway have a different relative height and distance to both the obstruction and river views, and the orientation of the views from number 78 Riverway over number 7 Salter Point Parade East is also considerably different from that of number 80 Riverway, which is to the southeast. As such, each view needs to be considered independently. In this instance, the upper floor of number 80 Riverway is considered to be higher than that of the upper floor of number 78 Riverway, and the viewing point of number 80 Riverway is also closer to the obstruction than number 78 Riverway, both of which are factors which would result in greater viewing angles towards the river over the obstruction and therefore lesser impact. The proposed dwelling is anticipated to obstruct approximately half of the potential maximum viewing angle towards the river for both of these viewpoints. As the views from the ground floor of number 80 Riverway already have a similar obstruction, being the existing dwelling at number 7 Salter Point Parade, its views are largely unaffected, and it currently only has access to approximately 50% of the potential maximum vertical viewing angle.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Your second question, Mr Santor?
Sorry, the photos in the appendix are taken pretty close, our photo and the photo from...
Mr Santor, I'm sorry, the time for deputation was last week's.
No, I understand.
I've got to be fair to everyone.
I can't agree, but anyway, question 2. Can the council clarify that the RL of the existing house, which is number Salter Point Parade, as in the sections on the plans presented, is either the top of the air conditioner or the top of the roof ridge? If it's the air conditioner, the RL proposed dwelling will be 2.3 metres higher than the current roof ridge. And significant compromise. The applicant supplied diagrams with the RL on and show affected sightlines. Looking at those sightlines, it is ambiguous because all I can see is the top floor, which is the bedroom only, in number 80, has fantastic views, but the habitable, and this is on the section of number 80, will lose their view, some of their view. Yeah, maybe someone can explain how these sections really present themselves.
Thank you for the question. Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Ms Mayor. So the section showing sightlines over the existing and proposed dwellings at number 7 Salter Point Parade indicates the top of ridge height for the existing dwelling based on levels obtained through the site survey. The site survey confirms the top of the ridge for the existing dwelling as 12.13 and the top of the AC unit as 13.08. The AC unit is not shown in the section, and it is acknowledged that the existing AC will be visible and obstruct some views from number 80 Riverway, which is evident in the photos provided by the landowner, included in the schedule of submissions, which are attached to the report.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. And your final question, Mr Santor?
The last question, would the council accept a lower level single house or the proposed dwelling being lowered by excavation to a level to reduce the loss of view, which will meet the requirements of LPP 5.1 as well as satisfy the concerns of loss of significant views?
Thank you for the question. Ms Shaw.
Thank you. So it is not a relevant planning consideration that another proposal may provide a better planning outcome. The role of the decision maker is to assess whether, in the interest in orderly and proper planning, the amenity of the area and applicable planning instruments, whether the development should be approved or not, and not to redesign the proposal. In response to the height variation, the applicant has already amended the roof form from a 15-degree pitch down to a 3-degree pitch to reduce the overall height of the proposal. The City would support a proposal that meets all requirements of Local Planning Policy 5.1, Salter Point Escarpment, and ASR 12, subject to compliance with other R Code and statutory requirements.
Thank you, Ms Shaw, and thank you, Mr Santor, for the questions. I'd now like to invite Mr Tim Howling of South Perth, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm the chair of the Riva building at 5 Harbour Terrace in South Perth. Firstly, is council aware of the poor condition of Harbour Terrace?
Ms Shaw. Oh, my bad. Mr Colgan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, the City is aware of the condition of Harbour Terrace. The City acknowledges that it is in poor condition and is repairing the road surface when potholes develop.
Sorry, I missed that last bit.
We'll repair the road surface when potholes develop.
Is council aware of the dangers that Harbour Terrace presents both to road users, pedestrians, and particularly those persons crossing the road?
Thank you for the question. Mr Colgan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The City believes there's no significant risk to road users, including pedestrians.
Thirdly, is council aware that Harbour Terrace has deteriorated into a mishmash of potholes and that are patched, ageing bitumen that creates hazard and unsightly streetscape, and for that reason, will the council then commit to placing the upgrade of the Harbour Terrace onto its up-and-coming budget, noting that council has long promised this upgrade of Harbour Terrace, and there appears to be sufficient funds to proceed with that upgrade?
Thank you for the question. Mr Colgan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Subject to appropriate funding being made available, the City is planning to undertake road resurfacing once the development at the north-western end of Harbour Terrace is completed. A development application for those lots is anticipated to be considered by the Development Assessment Panel in mid-May this year. Undertaking new road surfacing post-construction will ensure the new pavement treatment is not damaged by construction vehicles. I'd just like to add, this issue has been raised at a recent council workshop. Council can decide where it sits in the list of priorities.
Thank you, Mr Colgan, and thank you, Mr Howling, for your questions. All right, I'm just going to check with governance to see if there's any late questions in the tray. No late questions. In that case, I will close public question time at 23 minutes past 6. That brings us to item 7, which is confirmation of minutes and notes. Item 7.1 is minutes. Item 7.1.1 is the ordinary council meeting held on 25 March 2025. I'm going to look for a mover and a seconder for a motion that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held 25 March 2025 be taken as read and confirmed as a true and correct record. I think Councillor Brenda Abrandis was first there, Councillor Coveney as seconder. Councillor, does anyone oppose this? Councillor Waugh?
I don't oppose, thank you.
All right, that was unanimous. Thank you all. Item 7.2 is notes of briefings. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder to move a motion that council notes that the following council briefings and workshops were held. That's 7.2.1, concept briefings and workshops, and 7.2.2, council agenda briefing. That's 15th of April 2025. Could I have a mover? Councillor Brenda Abrandis, thank you. Someone to second. Councillor Coveney, thank you. Councillors, does anyone oppose? Councillor Waugh?
Again, I don't oppose, thank you.
No, in that case, I'll declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8 is presentations. Item 8.1 is petitions. That's nil for this evening. Item 8.2 is gifts or awards presented to council. That's nil for this evening. Item 8.3 is deputations, and deputations were heard at the council agenda briefing held on 15 April 2025. Item 9 is method of dealing with agenda business. I will now seek confirmation from the Acting Chief Executive Officer, Mr Gary Adams, that all the report items contained in tonight's agenda were discussed at the April Council agenda briefing, with the exception of item 10.5.2, appointment of recruitment consultant. Mr Adams.
That's correct, Mr Mayor.
All right. So, with the exception of those items to be withdrawn for discussion, reports will be adopted by exception resolution. And by this, I mean the officer recommendation will be adopted as is without discussion or amendment. The following items have been withdrawn for this evening. That's item 10.1.1, proposed lease of 57 Angelo Street, South Perth. The reason is that Councillor Mary Choi has declared an indirect financial interest. Councillor Nick Coveney has an amendment. And I think I'm going to err on the side of caution, and I might declare a financial and proximity interest in this item as well, because one of my donors to my 2023 re-election campaign owns the property across the road from 57 Angelo Street. I don't know if a lease counts as a proximity or a financial interest, but I will err on the side of caution in this case. So I will leave the room for that item as well, just in case. We're also withdrawing item 10.3.3. That's E-Quote 3 of 2025, irrigation mainline replacement, Sir James Mitchell Park. The reason for that is Councillor Jennifer Navard has a proximity interest. Item 10.3.5 is being withdrawn. That's proposed group dwelling, Lot 4, Number 7, Salter Point Parade, Salter Point. The reason is Councillor Blake D'Souza has an alternative. Item 10.4.3, City of South Perth Dogs Local Law 2025 is being withdrawn. The reason for that is an absolute majority is required. Item 10.4.4, Chief Executive Officer Selection Committee, appointment of presiding member and deputy presiding member. The reason for that is an absolute majority is required, and presiding member and deputy presiding member appointments are required. Item 10.5.1, policy review. The reason is Councillor Mary Choi has an amendment, and also council adjourned debate on the officer's recommendation when this was last brought to council. And item 10.5.2, appointment of recruitment consultant. The reason is it's a new report from the CEO Selection Committee meeting, and an absolute majority is required for that item. Councillors, does anyone else have any items that they wish to withdraw for discussion this evening? Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
10.3.2, Mr Mayor.
All right, bear with me. That is RFT 3 of 2024, supply, installation and maintenance of bus shelters with advertising space.
That is correct.
All right, that's being withdrawn. Reason for withdrawal?
A couple of questions with regard to this item, Mr Mayor.
All right. All right, Councillor Waugh, any items to be withdrawn this evening?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right. In that case, I'm about to call for a mover and a seconder to carry the following items by exception resolution. That's item 10.3.1, provision of pre-booked bulk verge waste collection service. Item 10.4.1, listing of payments, March 2025. Item 10.4.2, monthly financial statements, March 2025. And item 10.4.5, Perth Airports Municipalities Group, Inc. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Someone to second. Councillor Brenda Abrandis, thank you. Councillors, does anyone oppose this item? Councillor Waugh?
No opposition, thank you.
All right. Then in that case, those items have just been passed by exception resolution in accordance with clause 5.5 of the City of South Perth Standing Orders local law, and the officers' recommendations have been accepted by council. We'll now be moving on to those reports identified to be withdrawn for discussion. The first of which is item 10.1.1, entitled Proposed Lease of 57 Angelo Street, South Perth. Councillor Choi has declared an indirect financial interest, and I've just declared a proximity and financial interest. With Councillor Waugh, that was weird. With Councillor Waugh attending remotely tonight, we'll need to appoint someone to take the chair in mine and in Councillor Waugh's absence. Councillor Coveney just pointed in your direction, Councillor Cridland. Are you happy to do the honours if council supports that? All right. Councillor Coveney has moved that Councillor Cridland take the role of presiding member for this item. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Navard, thank you. Does anyone oppose, councillors? Councillor Waugh?
No, I don't oppose, thank you.
All right. In that case, I'll invite Councillor Cridland to take my seat for the duration of item 10.1.1. Councillor Choi and I will depart the chamber for the duration of this item. And if someone would be kind enough to come and get us when the item is done, that would be outstanding. I'll see you all soon.
Hello everyone now. Right, I don't often get an audience this big, can I say? I hope there's someone online. All right, we're up to 10.1.1 and we have an officer recommendation, but we also have a proposed amendment put forward by Councillor Coveney. Now, at the outset, Councillor Coveney, do you wish to move?
Yes.
Your proposed amendment as the substantive motion, subject to there being a seconder?
Yes.
All right. Do we have a seconder to that proposal? Councillor Navard. Well, in that case, I'll hand over to you, Councillor Coveney.
Thank you, Councillor Cridland. So the amendment that I've made is as follows. At the end of paragraph 1, I've added the words subject to the following amendments. Dot point 1, under the heading land, reword as follows. Part lot 747 on deposited plan 161127, comprised in certificate of title volume 1905 folio 63. Dot point 2, under the heading lease area, reword as follows. Subject site 427 square metres, comprising of 182 square metres tenancy plus 7 open car bays, full stop, zoning dash neighbourhood centre, brackets R-AC3, and the third dot point is under the heading rent, reword as follows, $73,300 per annum. And I've added a paragraph 4, which says approve the excision and conversion of 7 car parking bays along the southern boundary of lot 747 on deposited plan 161127 to 2P public car parking bays, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Sunday. The net effect of what I'm effectively proposing is taking back 7 of the 14 car bays that are previously leased for public use rather than private use.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Now, does the...
Give some reasons,
well,
briefly.
why not?
Thank you. Soco Realty currently utilises 14 car bays. It's proposed that half of those bays, being those furthest away from the business, be made public. The 3 other real estate agencies within this precinct, within 50 metres of each other, get by with a similar number of bays, if not less than 7. The owner of Soco Realty has indicated that he's still willing to renew the lease under this proposed reduction. The reduction in annual rental income from the loss of those bays is only about $4,000, and in my view, this is made up in the amenity to residents that they get by having public car bays opposite Coles. This is an area in which public car parking is at a premium, and the city anticipates that it will lose 5 bays to make way for the Ainslie Street zebra crossing. So this effectively makes up for the shortfall created. Notwithstanding, she's not in the room at the moment. Councillor Choi does support this, so you've got 2 Mill Point Ward councillors that are in agreement as to something that is occurring in the Mill Point Ward. So I'd urge you all to support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Coveney. Now, Councillor Navard, is there something you would like to say as the seconder?
Very little, because I think that's quite succinct. We're all aware that there's a premium in terms of parking spaces in that area, and if there's any opportunity to take back some of the parking, then I think that's a very good idea.
Thank you, Councillor Navard. All right, is there someone to speak against the motion? And just at this stage, I will foreshadow that if this motion fails, then I'll move the original officer recommendation. So is there someone to speak against the motion? Now, Councillor Brenda Abrandis, I saw one of your fingers raised, so I'm not sure what that means.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Thank you. Has the lessee been approached with regard to the loss of the 7 parking bays, and are they comfortable with losing 7 parking bays is my first question.
Now, in respect of that, normally questions go to one of the officers rather than one of the other councillors. I do think Councillor Coveney mentioned that the tenant or the lessee was happy with the proposed reduction. Although Councillor Coveney doesn't have to answer it, I'll give him the opportunity if he wants to speak in respect of that, or I'll hand it to the CEO. CEO.
So our officers have discussed the matter with the lessee, and they're comfortable with what's being proposed. Their preference was obviously to maintain all the car parks, but they understand the reasons why, and they are understanding of the fact that parking in there is at a premium, and they're comfortable with what's being proposed.
I think you had a second question.
Thank you, CEO Adams, and thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. The second question is just with regards to the calculation for the reduction in the annual rent based on the loss of car bays, just to confirm if the administration are comfortable with that number and if that's a reasonable reduction. Thank you.
Yeah, it was done as part of the valuation, so that number of car bays equated to that amount in the as per the valuer's assessment.
Thank you, CEO Adams.
Okay, questions having been answered, is there anyone to speak against this motion? Is there anyone who wishes to speak for the motion? There hasn't been any debate. Councillor Coveney, do you wish to sum up?
No.
All right, I'll put the matter to the vote, and what we're voting on is the substantive motion as amended by Councillor Coveney and seconded by Councillor Navard. Councillor Waugh, how do you vote? In the affirmative or against the motion?
Yes, I'd like to support the amended motion by Councillor Coveney. Thank you.
In that case, we now have 5 votes for the motion, none against, and the motion is carried. Those people who voted for it are Councillor Waugh, Councillor Navard, Councillor D'Souza, Councillor Cridlin, that's me, Councillor Coveney, and Councillor Brenda Abrandis. So I couldn't count, that's actually 6, not 5. And time to get the Mayor back. Thank you, everyone.
Alrighty, thanks for bearing with me, folks. I've just been advised that item 10.3.4 should have been included on the list of items to be passed on block. That microphone dropping out. It was left off the list due to an admin error, so I'll just raise that in the ordinary course when we get to it, but just giving you all a heads up about that. The next item to be withdrawn for discussion this evening is item 10.3.2, entitled Supply, Installation and Maintenance of Bus Shelters with Advertising Space. There's an officer recommendation before us, so I haven't received any amended motions or alternative motions. Would anyone like to move the officer recommendation? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Anyone to second? Councillor D'Souza, thank you. Councillor Coveney, anything to say or?
No, thank you.
All right. Councillor D'Souza, anything to say as seconder?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I'll briefly say we've asked our admin staff to go away and look at options to diversify our rates, to diversify revenue away from rates. This is exactly what they've done, and I commend them for it. I think it's a great proposal. We've waited over a year since this last came to council, and I encourage my fellow councillors to approve this without further delay. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor D'Souza. Councillor Brenda Abrandis, I think you mentioned that you'd like to ask a question or two.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got 3 questions.
Fire away.
Okay. At last week's agenda briefing, it was indicated that there was a $90,000 differential between the value of option 1, which is the unhealthy and potential links to cancer option, and option 2, which is the healthier foods and beverage advertising with better wellbeing outcomes. Has the city obtained any evidence or any anecdotal support as to what the value of the health to the members of the community might be, contrast to the $90,000 per annum that would be foregone?
Thank you, Councillor Brenda Abrandis. Mr Adams?
No.
Thank you, Mr Adams. Your second question, Councillor Brenda Abrandis?
Last week at the agenda briefing, it was indicated that we approach Healthway for funding. And just as a matter of understanding, have we recently received funding from Healthway and an indication as to how much we have received by way of funding?
Should I direct that to Mr Adams? Yes, okay.
Yeah, I'll have to take that one on notice.
Okay, thank you. The revised operating revenue for the current year is $78,888,000. The year-to-date net operating surplus is $18.8 million, currently year-to-date exceeding the budget by $536,000. $90,000 represents 0.12% of our total income for the current year. That's not even 1%, it's about 1/10%. Does the administration consider this to be an appropriate, albeit minuscule, investment in the community's health in the foregoing of $90,000 per annum?
Mr Adams.
So the decision is one. That decision is one for council to make. Our aim was to put in front of you the information required to make the decision. So we've determined that there is a $90,000 difference per annum between the best option with additional restrictions and the best option without additional restrictions. The decision is one for council, not one for the administration.
Thank you, Mr Adams. Councillors, does anyone wish to speak against the officer recommendation? Does anyone wish to speak? Oh, Councillor Ward, did you wish to speak against the officer recommendation?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right. Does anyone wish to speak in favour of the officer recommendation? That's a no. Okay. I don't think there's really been any debate, so probably no need for Councillor Coveney to wind up. I'll simply put the officer recommendation to the vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. And Councillor Waugh, how do you vote?
I support the officer recommendation, thank you.
All right, thank you. So the votes are in. Those who voted in favour of the officer recommendation, which was carried 7-1, was myself, Mayor Milner, Councillors Mary Choi, Nick Coveney, Glenn Cridland, Blake D'Souza, Jennifer Navard and Bronwyn Waugh. Those voting against, Councillor Andre Brender-Abrandis. Okay. We move on to the next item to be withdrawn for discussion this evening, which is item 10.3.3. And I understand that Councillor Navard is making a request in accordance with section 5.68 of the Local Government Act. Councillor Navard has declared it's a proximity interest, wasn't it, Councillor Navard? Yes. Councillor Navard has advised that she would like to participate in the debate and vote on item 10.3.3, entitled E-Quote 3 of 2025, Irrigation Mainline Replacement, Sir James Mitchell Park. I will have to ask Councillor Navard to leave the meeting at this point because Council will need to make a decision as to whether or not and to what extent Councillor Navard can participate in the debate and vote on item 10.3.3. So we'll just give Councillor Navard a moment to leave the chamber. And there we go. For the benefit of the tape, Councillor Navard has now left the chamber for now. So, councillors, Councillor Navard has declared a proximity interest in item 10.3.3 as follows, open quote, "My house is across the road from a section of Sir James Mitchell Park included in considerations in item 10.3.3, close quote. The Act specifies that Councillor Navard can only participate if Council decides that the interest is either so trivial and insignificant as to be unlikely to influence their conduct in relation to the matter, or it's an interest held in common to a significant number of electors or ratepayers. So Council needs to consider the extent of the interest in relation to the criteria that I've just read out, and secondly, the extent to which Councillor Navard can participate, either by speaking only, voting only, or both. I will move a motion that Council does not approve Councillor Jennifer Navard's participation to speak or participate in this item on the grounds that the interest is not so trivial or insignificant as to be unlikely to influence her conduct in relation to the matter, and is not held in common with a significant number of electors or ratepayers. I would like to give my reasons as to why I say that, but I will need to see if anyone's willing to second my motion first. Is anyone willing to second? Councillor Cridland? Thank you. Okay. Difficult situation, councillors. I suspect, like maybe at least some of you, I feel a bit uncomfortable about authorising any elected member to participate and vote on an item where that elected member has already declared a financial or a proximity interest. Why do I say that? The person with the best knowledge as to whether or not a financial interest or a proximity interest exists is the relevant elected member. And if an elected member believes that they have a proximity interest, I'm certainly uncomfortable arguing that they don't, or second-guessing the extent of that particular interest. That's really not something I'm comfortable with. Voting to include an elected member in the consideration of an item where that elected member has already declared a proximity interest, I think could potentially open a Pandora's box. I can foresee the possibility of council voting to deny one elected member's request at one council meeting, but then potentially voting to authorise a different elected member's request at a different council meeting. And I'm not for a moment suggesting that anyone wouldn't be acting in good faith. I'm not for a moment suggesting that people aren't voting with their heart and what they think is right. But I can see questions being asked amongst our community why council approved one elected member but not another. So I hope that for as long as I'm on council, I would take a consistent approach whenever this issue came up. I think this is the first time it's come up in the chamber, but we have had discussions amongst ourselves previously. I think that was back in October of last year. It's my preliminary view based on the information I've got. Other elected members may well think differently, but that's why I'm moving the motion that I've moved. Councillor Cridland, anything to say as seconder?
The main reason that I seconded this motion is because I was interested in hearing your reasons. This is a very unusual thing to do. I can't recall it in the current term of council we've done it before. I can remember doing it some councils ago, and I think it perhaps was also in respect of Sir James Mitchell Park. And I guess what we're looking at is the matter so trivial, or is it shared by so many people that it's not really something that differentiates the councillor from someone else? I was initially thinking, well, it was, but then I'm thinking, well, maybe if it is across the road from where Councillor Navard lives, then maybe she does have a different interest in that particular part of the world to the rest of the residents, and maybe people in Karrawara or Manning might go, well, you know, how come she gets to have a say on something that's across the road from her that she may not want dug up, or she may want dug up, I don't know. Maybe there is a risk. I don't know. That's probably not terribly helpful for people, but that's at least why I seconded it.
Thank you, Councillor Cridland. Councillors, is there anyone else who would like to speak against the motion before us at this time? By all means.
3 questions. I think, Mr Mayor, you'd said we could make a finding of or it's this or it's something else, but the wording I saw on the screen was and. So I just wanted to confirm, do we need to find it's a 2-limb test, or it's just it's one or the other can be satisfied?
I'll take advice from Ms Fry, but my understanding is, number one, we've got to find that I'm going to try and avoid a double negative here. Number one, we've got to find, if Councillor Navard is going to participate, that it's not so trivial or insignificant a matter as to be unlikely to influence Councillor Navard's conduct, and we've also got to find, again, I hate double negatives, that it is not an interest held in common with a significant number of electors or ratepayers. So you've got to find the negative in both limbs, I think, there. Is that correct, Ms Fry? All right, yes.
Great, thank you. And then the other questions I had were, do we have any idea of the number of residents that live directly adjacent to the 4 kilometre South Perth foreshore?
I don't off the top of my head. Does anyone?
Talking thousands of people, hundreds of people?
I wouldn't think it was thousands.
And then the third question was in relation to the 10.3.3. Am I correct in understanding it impacts the entire foreshore, not just the land directly in front of Councillor Navard?
I'll send that one to Mr Colgan. I was looking at the diagram on page 23 of the agenda, but Mr Colgan?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. The work is in that diagram, it's just there, but it is part of the whole foreshore. So part of the whole system which does do the whole foreshore, but the work is right there.
Councillors, does anyone wish to speak against the motion currently before us? Councillor Waugh?
No, Mr Mayor, this is a difficult one. I wouldn't mind just making a comment, if I may.
Far away.
So I understand that you've said that it is a 2-limb test, but we must find it's both insignificant as well as impacting not an interest in common.
Sorry, Councillor Waugh, just before you continue there, I'll get Ms Fry to clarify how the test works.
Sorry, it is or. It's
Sure.
either one, either. Yeah.
Or.
Or, yes.
Right, okay, yeah, because I had understood that it was either as well. So thank you for clarifying that. And in addition to that, I understand, Mr Mayor, that you have raised a concern in respect of, potentially consistency in decision making. And I must say that I don't share that concern, because I think every instance must be considered on the circumstances and on the merits of those circumstances. And so I guess in this case, I probably will be, probably am speaking against, as I think of it, because I do consider that this is an interest in common. The Sir James Mitchell Park is a very large park, and there are a lot of people who are abutting or adjacent to the park. And the nature of the motion before us, I don't think is something that would warrant Councillor Navard's impartiality to be affected to the point that it would be detrimental to the outcome. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waugh. Councillor Choi, speaking for or against?
Just a question first, please, Mr Mayor.
Far away.
I understand that you feel that the interest is not trivial, but it is significant. And I just want to know if you could expand on that. Like, why do you think it's not trivial or insignificant, please?
Well, it's not.
Because it's just regarding irrigation, isn't it?
It's not my declaration, Councillor Choi. I think what I was saying was no councillor knows their personal circumstances better than that particular councillor. Councillor Navard has chosen to declare a proximity interest, absent some really strong advice from someone who's either governance or a legal professional. I'm certainly uncomfortable with saying, well, I think I know better. Councillor Navard has chosen to declare a proximity interest, but is asking council to participate. I don't know Councillor Navard's circumstances better than what Councillor Navard does. If she says she's got a proximity interest, I don't think I'm in a good position to argue. And the other thing I think I raised in my reasons was I'm uncomfortable with the possibility of council sometime in the future authorising one elected member to vote in particular circumstances, but then potentially in the future voting against another elected member voting in similar circumstances. I think our community might have some questions about that. So I guess what I'm gently saying is I'm erring on the side of caution. If Councillor Navard thinks she's got a proximity interest, well, okay, I don't know any better, and the usual treatment of a proximity interest is you don't participate, you don't vote. Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've actually got a couple of questions on this item. So just for clarification purposes, for a proximity interest, is the elected member still not required to vote? I thought it was the financial interest where they had to recuse themselves from an item.
I'll refer that to Ms Fry, but I'm pretty sure it's both proximity and financial interests where, absent something like this, you don't vote and you don't participate in the debate. But Ms Fry?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right.
Applies to both.
Next question, Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Ms Fry. With regard to the second part, it talks about in relation to the matter and is not held in common with a significant number of electors or ratepayers. Could I please have some context around what the significant number might look like and why that may be so important with regard to, say, gardens, lawns and irrigation?
Ms Fry, should I send that your way?
So there's no definition of significant in the Act. However, when they look at these sorts of disclosures, it's got to be an interest in common of ratepayers and electors, not just that section, or not just per ward. So it's as a whole.
Any further questions, Councillor Brenda Abrandis?
Not at the moment, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right. Councillor Choi.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Does the administration have any advice that they could maybe share with us?
Mr Adams.
So the advice would be this is purely a decision for council to make on the facts that are in front of it. We don't tend to enter into decisions that councillors are going to make with regard to proximity or with regard to any other interest. What we do is help them seek the right advice from the Department of Local Government or from WOLGA or, if it's required, from legal specialists. But in terms of declaring an interest, it's totally up to the elected member. And in terms of this decision, it's one that the elected members or the council has to decide of its own volition.
Thank you, Mr Adams. Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Following on from those comments, has Councillor Navard sought any advice from governance or sought any advice from WOLGA with regard to this matter that you may be aware of?
Councillor Cridland, I see.
I think I'll raise a point of order because I'm not sure it's really appropriate for us to delve into what advice a councillor's obtained. And if anyone knows about it, I would have presumed that advice to that councillor would be confidential. I'm inclined to agree with that. I don't know if there's anything that Mr Adams or Ms Fry would want to say.
So it's irrelevant anyway because she's already declared the proximity interest. So whatever advice she sought, or whether she did or she didn't, she's made that declaration of proximity interest. So it's up to council now to decide whether it's trivial or insignificant or whether it's an interest held in common to the extent that council feels comfortable with her participating.
Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, CEO Adams. On that basis that Councillor Navard has actually made her declaration as to what she feels comfortable with, is there any need for this motion now, given that Councillor Navard has removed herself from the process and this may effectively achieve the same outcome? So should it not be for the individual elected member to make that determination?
Well, that's usually the case, Councillor Brenda Abrandis. What Councillor Navard is asking us is, she's saying, I've declared a proximity interest. ordinarily that would preclude me from taking part in this debate and voting on this item. I am asking council under the section 5.68, I think, of the Local Government Act, can you make an exception for me on this occasion? And the test that I mentioned before about is it so trivial or insignificant as to be unlikely to influence Councillor Navard's conduct in relation to this item, or is the interest held in common to a significant number of electors or ratepayers? Those are the things that we need to consider in deciding whether or not we should make an exception to the usual rule to allow Councillor Navard to participate and vote in this case. Have I encapsulated that accurately, Ms Fry? Thank you. So I hope that answers your question. Councillor Choi.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Is there a test for trivial or insignificant for that first limb, please? Or an example, or any guidance from the department on that?
Ms Fry? Yeah. Folks, you want to ask questions about this, that's fine, but I do wonder whether we're going an awful long way down a rabbit hole here for something that on the face of it shouldn't, well, I wonder if we're going too far down this rabbit hole, but Councillor Coveney.
I just wanted to speak in favour of your motion you put forward and give my reasons as to why. Look, I agree with Councillor Ward that each case should be determined on its own facts. I don't think that it's an interest held in common because we're talking about a specific part of the foreshore rather than the foreshore as a whole. If it was a foreshore as a whole, I'd have a different view. I don't know if it's trivial or not. On one hand, we need to replace the retic, and I consider that pretty trivial. But equally, I heard what Councillor Cridland had to say in terms of, well, someone from Karrawara might feel differently about us investing money there as opposed to in Karrawara. And I agree with the Mayor in terms of erring on the side of caution. Based on what we've all had to say, I can see there are arguments for and against. But, yeah, we've got an elected member that's declared an interest because she thought that she may have one, as the Mayor said. She probably knows better than all of us her position. So, erring on the side of caution, I'll be supporting the Mayor's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Coveney. Councillors, does anyone who hasn't already spoken like to speak either for or against the motion before us? Councillor Waugh? Oh, no, you did speak. My apologies. Anyone who hasn't already spoken? No? Okay. In that case, I'll simply wind up. I won't take long. I mean, councillors, this is our decision. I think we should err on the side of caution here. I don't feel like I can second guess the conclusion that Councillor Navard already came to. I don't think that would be responsible, but the decision is up to us. So I'll call the vote on my motion that basically says that Councillor Navard should probably sit this one out. Councillors, please cast your votes. That's right, yes. All right, Councillor Waugh, how do you vote?
I'll be voting again. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, so the votes are in. Those who voted in favour of my motion were myself, Mayor Milner, Councillors Nick Coveney, Glenn Cridland and Blake D'Souza. Those who voted against were Councillor Bronwyn Waugh, Councillor Andre Brender-Abrandis and Councillor Mary Choi. We now proceed to the substantive, item 10.3.3. There's an officer recommendation before us. I haven't received any amended motions or any alternative motions. Would anyone like to move the officer recommendation? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Someone to second. Councillor Brender-Abrandis, thank you. Councillors, does anyone oppose this item? Councillor Waugh?
No, I don't. Thank you.
No. Well, in that case, if no one opposes, I'll simply use my powers under the standing orders to declare it carried unanimously. If someone would please bring Councillor Navard back. All right. Has Councillor D'Souza just left the chamber? Okay, I guess we'll carry on. All right, the next item to, it wasn't actually withdrawn this evening, but we did omit it from the en bloc motion due to an admin error there. So I'll treat item 10.3.4 in the ordinary course as though it was withdrawn for debate this evening. It's entitled Proposed Change of Use, Multiple Dwelling to Unhosted Short-Term Rental Accommodation, Lot 1, number 1/5 Clarence Street, South Perth. There's an officer recommendation before us. I haven't received any amended or alternative motions. Would someone move the officer recommendation? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Somebody second. Councillor Brenda Abrandis, thank you. Councillors, does anyone oppose this item? Councillor Waugh? Councillor Waugh, are you there? Councillor Waugh? Governance, we may have lost Councillor Waugh. Sure thing. All right, just amuse yourselves for the moment, councillors.
Thank you.
All right, can you hear me, Councillor Waugh?
I can, thank you.
All right. So just to bring you back up to speed, I'm not sure where you dropped out, but we're on item 10.3.4 entitled Proposed Change of Use, Multiple Dwelling to Unhosted Short-Term Rental Accommodation, Lot 1, number 1/5 Clarence Street, South Perth. Councillor Coveney has moved the officer recommendation. Councillor Brenda Abrandis has seconded the officer recommendation. And I've just asked everyone whether or not there's anyone that opposes the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Mayor, I do not oppose. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. There being no one opposing, I'll simply use my powers under the standing orders to carry item 10.3.4 carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move on to item 10.3.5 entitled Proposed Group Dwelling, Lot 4, number 7 Salter Point Parade, Salter Point. Councillor D'Souza, I understand, has an alternative motion. Councillor D'Souza, would you like to move that alternative motion now? And if so, I'll ask you to read your alternative motion.
I would, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, fire away, please.
The motion is as follows, that Council, pursuant to Clause 68, Sub 2 of Schedule 2 of the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015 and the provisions of the City of South Perth Local Planning Scheme Number 7, refuse the application for development approval for a grouped dwelling on Lot 4, number 7 Salter Point Parade, Salter Point, for the following reasons. 1, the proposed development exceeds the maximum 3.5 metre height limit set for the site by Schedule B, Additional Site Requirements, or ASR 12, the Salter Point Escarpment, Salter Point of the City of South Perth Local Planning Scheme Number 7, or LPS 7. 2, the proposed development is inconsistent with Design Principle 5.1.6 P6 of the Residential Design Codes, as the building height proposed adversely impacts access to views of significance. 3, the proposed development exceeds the projection envelope in accordance with Local Planning Policy 5.1, so Salter Point Escarpment. Number 4, the proposed development is inconsistent with Clause 67 of the Planning and Development Act, of the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015, as I, the proposal is inconsistent with orderly and proper planning. 2, the building height is incompatible with the desired character of its settings and the development on land in the locality in relation to the effect of height. And 3, the proposal is inconsistent with the amenity of the locality.
Thank you, Councillor D'Souza. Would anyone like to second Councillor D'Souza's? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Councillor D'Souza, the floor is yours for your reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, most of the reasons were covered in the text of the motion as is required for these sort of planning rejections. But in terms of overview, my reasons for change are as follows. 1, this DA does have a significant impact on views. In 2018, Council introduced Policy P320, and I was on Council with Councillor Colin Carla when we did this, specifically to deal with the protection of views along the Salter Point Escarpment. When we were going through our workshops for our planning scheme, LPS 7, ASR 12 was specifically drafted by Council to supersede Policy P320, to be enshrined into our planning scheme, thereby providing certainty to residents in Salter Point as to the protection of views. This development application is not compliant with the height limits Council decided upon in LPS 7 by virtue of ASR 12. Further, it is inconsistent with the R codes. And finally, community expectation, by virtue of objections received and general concerns about view protection along the Salter Point escarpment, requires Council to uphold the planning controls Council itself has imposed upon this precinct. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor D'Souza. Councillor Coveney.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just really briefly, look, the development is inconsistent with our local planning scheme. My view is, why have a scheme if we aren't going to follow it? My position on significant views has been fairly consistent for the last 12 months, which is that we should protect those views. Ultimately, what drives me is that residents pay a pretty penny for a slice of paradise, and who are we to take that away? So that's why I'm voting in favour of this alternative motion.
Thank you, Councillor Coveney. Councillors, does anyone wish to speak against Councillor D'Souza's alternative motion? I'll speak. Oh, Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got some questions with regard to this item.
Fire away.
Thank you. With regard to the alternative motion, I see that paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3 and also paragraph 4 all talk to the building height being incompatible. So each of those paragraphs do. For clarification purposes, it's noted that the development exceeds the maximum height of 3.5 metres. Is the exceedance amount the 10.5 centimetres that was previously raised?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So it's the difference between the local planning scheme requirement, which was the maximum building height was 4.89 metres compared to the maximum prescribed in the scheme, which was 3.5 metres, compared to the exceedance of the projection envelope provided by the local planning policy, which is that 10 centimetres you were talking about. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Director Shaw. From the administration's perspective, the applicant has obviously considered adverse feedback and taken certain measures to actually make this more palatable and also more compliant with regard to our local planning scheme. Can you please provide an indication as to what sort of measures have been undertaken by the applicant to make this more acceptable?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So as I outlined earlier in public question time, the key difference was changing the roof form to change the pitch from 15 degrees to 3 degrees.
Thank you, Director Shaw. The current proposal had been indicated as being relatively modest with regard to the size of the block, which is 1,400 square metres, I understand. Is this modest in context of what could possibly be developed on that site under the existing codes?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think I mentioned at the agenda briefing session that the site itself could actually accommodate 3 group dwellings. So the applicant has put in the proposal for 1 group dwelling, obviously with the heights that are outlined in this development proposal.
Thank you very much again, Director Shaw. So just a final question. So with this potential development, if we reject the officer's recommendation and go with the alternative motion, this may be subject to appeal by the applicant. Could you outline what the possible outcomes for an appeal may mean with regard to this development?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So yes, the applicant would be entitled to an application for review with the State Administrative Tribunal. It would first be subject to a directions hearing where the parties would need to agree whether or not they can mediate on a different outcome. It would then go through various rounds of mediation with the State Administrative Tribunal. where the applicant may elect to modify the proposal, either to reduce the potential height of the development or put a completely new proposal on the table. So they could potentially increase the height. Following which time, State Administrative Tribunal may direct Council to reconsider its previous decision under Section 31 of the State Administrative Tribunals Act. If that occurs, Council will be requested to reconsider its previous decision, in which case it can either affirm or make a new decision. If that goes back to the State Administrative Tribunal and is not satisfactory to the applicant and they do not agree to vacate from those proceedings, the matter could proceed to a full hearing, in which case the State Administrative Tribunal will make the decision on the matter.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillor Choi?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just following on from that question and response, my understanding is that what the applicant may or may not do pending the decision or outcome of this item is not relevant planning consideration that Council ought to be considering. Is that correct?
Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's relevant to the extent that the applicant may make an application for a review, but we can't predict what could happen and if they actually make an application or what the outcome of those discussions may be.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillors, I think I asked previously whether anyone wished to speak against the alternative motion. I might say a couple of words, but I'll keep it quick. I get where the neighbours who aren't too keen on this proposal are coming from. I do. We have some wonderful views in the city of South Perth. Councillor Coveney is quite right. It's a very attractive part of where we live. However, when it comes to statutory planning decisions, we are required to apply planning law without fear or favour. It's often said that if the applicant is entitled to have their development application approved under our town planning scheme and under the legislation and regulations set down by the state government, we are obliged to approve that development application. Councillor De Souza says in his alternative motion that we should refuse the application and that it's non-compliant, whereas the city officers have said that we should approve the application subject to conditions. I'm not a planner. I've done my best to listen to the arguments for and against. On balance, if I'm discharging my duty and making a decision as though I were a member at SAT or a judge in the Supreme Court and applying planning law, I think on balance the officers have it correct. So completely understand the motive for this alternative motion, but I can't support it, and under the circumstances I feel I must foreshadow the officer recommendation if the alternative motion isn't successful. That's me. Would anyone else like to speak either for or against? Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd also like to speak against this alternative motion. I appreciate that views are important and people do pay money for views. I appreciate that it does cause a lot of angst within some areas accessing Swan River and Canning River views. This council went through a process of working through planning workshops and also local planning policy to try to address these issues, in particular where the escarpment does actually slant away and certain views are lost, and maybe there's been some previous bad behaviour over many years with regard to building developments. This alternative motion does consider the height limit, and as we've been advised tonight, the height limit above what is allowable is 10.5 centimetres, so we're talking 4 inches. It is not a significant exceedance, and last week in the agenda briefing, questions were asked and it was considered that that would not in itself be significant enough for this development application to be prevented. So the developer does have the opportunity to develop this much further and maybe could have been more unreasonable, but was very accommodating with regard to the modifications made to the current development application that's before us tonight. As indicated by Director Shaw, three dwellings could be built on this property, which would have a much more significant impact than the current development application, which sits behind an existing dwelling, so with minimal impact. So look, for this reason, I understand that the administration have gone through everything that is required to ensure that there is actually orderly and proper planning with regard to this. And I consider that, you know, the applicant also has the right to develop their property within reasonable parameters and within our local planning policy. And the 10.5 centimetres is not sufficient enough to deny this application. And I appreciate the amount of angst this causes within Salter Point. But for these reasons, I think the officer's recommendation is appropriate, and I won't be supporting the alternative motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brenda Brandis. Councillors, is there anyone who hasn't already spoken who would like to speak either for or against? Councillor Waugh?
Yes, I'd like to speak for, if I may, please, Mr Mayor.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I'm speaking in support of Councillor De Souza's motion to refuse this evening. And it's not a decision that I've taken lightly, but in my view, it is necessary. The proposal before us clearly breaches the 3.5 metre height limit set under the local planning scheme. And these limits are not arbitrary. They have been, well, they exist to protect the character and the amenity of the Salter Point Escarpment, which is an area that is both environmentally sensitive and highly valued by our community. We've also received quite a number of detailed submissions from nearby residents, all of whom have been opposed to the development, and their concerns are well-founded, and they do reflect the significant impact that this proposal would have on their amenity, their privacy and their access to views. So in my view, we do have an obligation to listen to our community and give weight to the legitimate issues that they've raised. The development fails to meet the design principles of the ARC codes, particularly in relation to the building height and the adverse impact on views of significance. These views are not only treated by our residents, but they are an important part of the locality's identity. It also exceeds the projection envelope set out in the local planning policy, which further demonstrates that the application does not align with the planning parameters established for the area. And in my view, clause 67 of the regulations is clear. The development needs to be consistent with the orderly and proper planning, and that includes being compatible with the desired character of the setting and protective of the locality's amenity. And in my view, this proposal does not meet that standard. So upholding the alternative motion is not about appraising the development. It's about ensuring that the development is respectful, compliant and in keeping with the city's planning framework and community expectations. And so I do urge my fellow councillors to support Councillor De Souza's alternative motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waugh. Councillors, anyone wishes to speak who hasn't spoken already, either for or against? Question, Councillor Brenda Brandis?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got a couple of questions.
Fire away.
Thank you. With regard to the alternative motion, Roman numeral 3 of paragraph 4 talks about the proposal is inconsistent with the amenity of the locality. Can the administration please advise whether that is actually correct? So the current proposal, is it inconsistent with the amenity for the locality?
Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So for the purposes of amenity in planning consideration, what we're looking at is the nature of the built environment, being all of the factors that contribute to the existing character of the area and what the future character of the area may be in relation to any policy settings that may exist. So the city has formed the view that the proposal could be considered consistent with the amenity of the area, given the minor nature of the variation proposed. However, it could also be argued that the proposal is inconsistent with the amenity of the locality if council forms the view that it would need to align with the policy conditions that have been set.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Director Shaw. My second question actually leads on from your comments, but as planned, it refers to paragraph 4, Roman numeral 2, which talks about the incompatibility with the desired character setting for the development in this locality. You've previously provided a bit of a comment, but with regard to that point, would this be considered incompatible with the desired character given the size and scale of buildings within that precinct?
Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Similar response. We've formed the view that the minor nature of the variation is such that it could be considered acceptable, but it's open to council to make that decision.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillors, does anyone wish to speak who hasn't already spoken? Going once, going twice, gone. Okay. Councillor De Souza, you have 5 minutes to wind up and rebut any arguments made against your motion, if you would like to do so.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, it was raised that the height variation is 10.5 centimetres. That's the variation from the projection envelope. The height variation is 1.39 metres. Just want to make that clear for council. The reason I brought this motion is because it is inconsistent with the height limits we set in LPS 7. We specifically put ASR 12 into the scheme to avoid grey areas and issues like this occurring. The history of this area from well before I was on council and I was sort of canvassing the area is that this is one of the biggest concerns there, and how there have been proponents who have exploited the nature, the sort of the angle, the curved nature of the escarpment. And so in 2018, Councillor Colin Culler and I board policy P320 to try to rectify these concerns. And we had a series of workshops around our planning scheme when we advertised that. And Council decided to enshrine ASR 12 into our scheme in order to preserve these views. And our planning scheme has the force of law, and whether or not Council decides it's a major or minor variation, I strongly believe we should be consistent and enforce the heights as we ourselves have decided are appropriate in our scheme. And for those reasons, I encourage councillors to support this alternative motion.
Thank you, Councillor De Souza. Councillors, I'm putting Councillor De Souza's alternative motion to the vote. Please cast your votes. And how do you vote, Councillor Waugh?
I support Councillor De Souza's motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The votes are in. Councillor De Souza's alternative motion has been carried 6 votes to 2. Those who voted in favour were Councillors Choi, Mary Choi, Nick Coveney, Glenn Cridland, Blake De Souza, Jennifer Navard and Bronwyn Waugh. Those who voted against were myself, Mayor Milner, and Councillor Brenda Abrandis. Okay, we move on to the next item to be withdrawn for discussion this evening, which is item 10.4.3, entitled City of South Perth Dogs Local Law 2025. An absolute majority is required for this item. We have an officer recommendation before us. I haven't received any amended or alternative motions. Would someone like to move the officer recommendation? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Someone to second? Councillor De Souza, thank you. Councillors, does anyone oppose this item? Councillor Waugh?
No, I don't oppose it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right. Well, in that case, with no one opposing, I'll simply use my powers under the standing orders to declare that motion carried unanimously, which of course satisfies the requirement for an absolute majority. Thank you all. We now move on to item 10.4.4, entitled Chief Executive Officer Selection Committee, appointment of presiding member and deputy presiding member. An absolute majority is required for this item, and we need to appoint a presiding member and a deputy presiding member. Councillors, I think the entire council is on this committee. So for that reason, I'll simply move a motion that point 1, that council, in accordance with section 5.12, subsection 1 of the Local Government Act, appoints me, Mayor Greg Milner, as the presiding member of the Chief Executive Officer Selection Committee. And point 2, in accordance with section 5.12, subsection 2 of the Local Government Act 1995, appoints Deputy Mayor Bronwyn Waugh as the Deputy Presiding Member of the Chief Executive Officer Selection Committee. If someone's willing to second that, I'll give my reasons. They won't be terribly groundbreaking. Thank you, Councillor De Souza. Seconded. Councillors, reasons are very simple. The entire council's on the committee. Might as well just treat it as we do every other meeting. Councillor De Souza, anything to say as seconder?
Nothing more, Mr Mayor.
All right. Councillors, does anyone oppose? Fire away, please.
What does section 5.12 say?
I haven't got the Act in front of me. Ms Fry, is that something we can lay our hands on?
Yeah, so section 5.12 says, number 1, the local government must appoint a member of a committee to be the presiding member of the committee by absolute majority. Number 2, the local government may appoint a member of a committee to the deputy presiding member of the committee. Absolute majority required.
Thank you, Ms Fry. Councillors, anyone wish to... Councillor Navard?
I was just wanting to ask a question, if I may.
Fire away.
It sounds to me like the text is suggesting that it should be wider than simply an appointment following our other practices, and I just wondered about how that might be enacted.
Ms Fry?
I'm not actually sure what you mean. The Act requires us to appoint a presiding member to the committee, and we may appoint a deputy presiding member to the committee as well. These are new regulations that have come in.
Any further questions, folks, or does anyone wish to speak either for or against? Councillor Coveney?
Just a clarification question. So to confirm, the Act doesn't say that Mayor Milner needs to be the presiding member and Deputy Mayor Waugh needs to be the deputy for this. It doesn't actually say that. That's what I'm understanding. Right.
It said it must appoint a member. Yeah.
In that case, I'll speak against the motion. I'd like to hear from if there's any other councillors who want to put their name forward before making my decision as to who I support for both those positions.
Well, I might seek guidance from governance, but there's a motion on the table before us. Certainly people can foreshadow if they want to do something different, but I think we've got to deal with the motion before another one can be proposed. Ms Fry?
Sorry, just to be clear, I'm not proposing a separate motion. I'm just explaining the reasons why I'm not supporting this one.
Of course, but I'm endeavouring to answer your question.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, folks. Would anyone like to ask any questions? Would anyone like to speak for or against? Councillor Waugh?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right. Going, gone. Okay. I'll simply put the motion to the vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. And how do you vote, Councillor Waugh?
I vote against. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right. So that motion has failed. 3 votes to 5. Those who voted in favour were myself, Mayor Milner, and Councillors Blake De Souza and Andre Brendera-Brandis. Those who voted against are Councillor Mary Choi, Councillor Nick Coveney, Councillor Glenn Cridland, Councillor Jennifer Navard and Councillor Bronwyn Waugh. Governance, what do we do here? No one else actually foreshadowed another motion.
No one foreshadowed it, but we need to appoint members.
So how do we proceed now? Do we... All right. Would someone like to move another motion? Councillor Choi?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I please propose that if whoever wants to nominate for position, maybe speak up. I'm happy to nominate myself for the deputy if someone else is happy to nominate for the presiding.
Does anyone else wish to nominate?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would be happy to nominate for the presiding. Thank you.
All right. In that case, Councillor Choi, are you moving a motion that take the officer recommendation, insert Councillor Waugh's name in slot 1 and your name in slot 2?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right. Councillors, so that's been moved by Councillor Choi. Councillor Waugh, are you seconding that?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right. Councillor Choi, the floor is yours for your reasons.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I really don't have much to say. Just happy to put my hand up for something, as I usually, sometimes do for these type of meetings. These type of committees. I have actually served on the committee previously for the previous CEO, and I've also done some of the CEO training. So I do think I'm a potentially good candidate for at least the deputy position. That's really all I have to say, and I support Deputy Mayor Bronwyn Wall for the presiding member as well, as she's the only one that nominated. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Choi. Councillor Waugh?
Oh, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, the only thing I can say is that I bring to this role both professional experience and my commitment, both as a lawyer and deputy mayor, and I understand governance process and the importance of balancing fairness with firm decision making. And throughout my time on council, I've worked very collaboratively with council, and I believe that I can provide steady and impartial leadership to ensure the committee remains focused, respectful and efficient. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waugh. Councillors, does anyone wish to speak either for or against? No. In that case, I'll simply put Councillor Choi's motion to the vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. And how do you vote, Councillor Waugh?
I'm supporting the motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right, the votes are in. Councillor Choi's motion has carried 7 votes to 1. Those in favour were Councillor Choi, Councillor Coveney, Councillor Cridland, Councillor D'Souza, Councillor Navard, Councillor Waugh and myself. Those against were Councillor Brenda Abrandis. We move on to the next item to be withdrawn for discussion, which is item 10.5.1, entitled Policy Review. Now, councillors, debate on this item was adjourned at the ordinary council meeting previously on 25 March 2025. Prior to the adjournment, the item was moved by Councillor Coveney and seconded by myself. I don't think anyone actually, no, neither of us chose to spoke. At that point in the debate, Councillor Choi moved a motion to adjourn the debate. I'm aware that Councillor Choi has an amendment that she'd like to make. Councillor Choi, did you wish to move that amendment now?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Please read it out then, please.
Okay, that Council 1 adopts P672 agenda briefings and concept forums with amendments as shown in attachment A, and 2 adopts P210 street verges and vegetation with amendments as shown in attachment A, and replacing the policy scope as follows. This policy applies to street verges and verge treatments within the road reserve.
Thank you. Would anyone like to second that amendment? Councillor Navard, Councillor Choi, the floor is yours for your reasons.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and to Councillor Navard. The reasons for this change are very minor. It's a very minor change and very simplistic reasons that I hope elect members have read and can be across quickly if they haven't. The first one is that policy P210 pertains only to street trees and verges, and hence the policy scope should only apply to street trees and verges. Modifying to clarify the scope will make the application of the policy more refined and clearer for residents. 2, loss of public trees predominantly occur as a result of crossover applications and from development on adjacent private property, and as such specific policy guidance is needed to ensure residents are aware of Council's position on this matter. And 3, the City is already responsible for the management of trees within public open spaces and parks, and hence they already have the discretion to determine whether it is appropriate to remove a tree in these circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Choi. Jennifer, Councillor Navard, you were the seconder. Would you like to speak?
No, that's fine, Mr Mayor. I think that's quite succinct.
All right, thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? Councillor Navard? Sorry, Councillor Waugh?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right, does anyone wish to speak in favour? Nope. On that case, Councillor Cridland?
I have a question for the mover and the seconder. Once I saw the proposed amendment, I had a read of the policy as amended, just to see whether or not it really did basically just deal with street trees and verge treatments in the road reserve. And I just noted that there was what appears to be a typo, and I wondered if that could also be corrected while we're dealing with this. And that is on page 104 of our attachments. There's a new heading put in, which is criteria for street removal. And I think it should be criteria for street tree removal. So I presume that that needs to be part of the amendment as well. That's because I don't think that can be administratively inserted, can it? It can be?
Ms Fryer, that can be administratively taken care of? Yep. Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I discussed that earlier with Councillor Choi, and we had agreed that it would be inserted administratively. That was previously raised.
Okay, in that case, just ignore everything I said.
All right. Councillors, does anyone wish to speak either for or against Councillor Choi's amendment to this item? That's a no. Councillor Choi, there's no debate, so no need to wind up. I'll simply put your amendment to the vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. And how do you vote, Councillor Waugh?
Supporting the amended motion, thank you.
All right, that was unanimous. So we now revert to the substantive motion, which is as amended by Councillor Choi's amendment. Councillor Coveney was the mover, I was the seconder. Neither of us have spoken at this particular point in time. Does anyone wish to speak against the amended substantive motion? Councillor Waugh?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right. Does anyone else wish to speak in favour? That's a no. There being no debate, no need for Councillor Coveney to wind up. I'll simply put the amended substantive item to the vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. And how do you vote, Councillor Waugh?
In favour, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right. I think I'm waiting on one more vote. All right. That was unanimous. Thank you. Okay. We now move on to item 10.5.2, entitled Appointment of Recruitment Consultant. Once again, we need an absolute majority for this item. There's an officer recommendation, which is also the committee recommendation before us. I haven't received any amended or alternative motions. Would someone like to move the combined officer and committee recommendation? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Councillor Brenda Abrandis to second. Councillors, does anyone oppose the combined officer and committee recommendation? Councillor Waugh?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right, then I'll simply use my powers under the standing orders to declare that carried. We now move on to item 11, which is applications for a leave of absence. Does anyone have a leave of absence application that they would like to submit? Councillor Choi?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. From the 9th to the 30th of May.
Inclusive?
Yes, please.
All right.
And from the 18th of July to the 1st of August.
Okay, I'll just read that back to make sure I've got that right. So Councillor Mary Choi for the period of 9 May 2025 to 30 May 2025 inclusive, and also for the period of 18 July 2025 to 1 August 2025 inclusive?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor.
All right, anyone else? Councillor Waugh?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right. In that case, I'm about to look for a mover and a seconder to move a motion that the leave of absence application received from Councillor Mary Choi for the periods of 9 May 2025 to 30 May 2025 inclusive, and for the period of 18 July 2025 to 1 August 2025 inclusive, be granted. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Brenda Abrandis. Councillors, does anyone oppose? Councillor Waugh?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right, then that's carried unanimously. Item 12 is motions of which previous notice has been given. That's nil. Item 13 is questions from members. Item 13.1 is responses to previous questions from members taken on notice, which is nil. Item 13.2 is questions from members. Are there any questions from members this evening? Councillor Navard?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got a few questions here. The first one relates to Coolidge Reserve, and I was wondering what funding options the city would have available to consider in order to create an enhanced Coolidge Reserve, acknowledging that access to plentiful water may present a challenge.
Who should I direct that to? Mr Colgan?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The city will be reliant on self-funding any project at Coolidge Reserve. The city does look for new funding streams that may become available. However, most funding rounds are very competitive, and it's unlikely this would be seen as a priority project given its proximity to the surrounding areas of major public open space.
Thank you, Mr Colgan. Any other questions, folks? Councillor Navard?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It relates to, the Hobbs Avenue Canning Highway intersection, and I was wondering about safety measure options that the city and or the Department of Main Roads may have available for addressing pedestrian safety in their transit across Hobbs Avenue at Canning Highway. And would this activity be funded directly by Department of Main Roads as their responsibility?
Thank you for the question. Mr Colgan?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The city would need to undertake an extensive review of the intersection to decide what options are available. A design at this intersection will need Main Roads approval. As Hobbs Ave is part of the city's local road network, the city would likely be responsible for the costs of any upgrades.
Thank you, Mr Colgan. Councillor Navard?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My next question relates to the Moresby Street precinct. With the funding proposed to be directed to Moresby Street shopping precinct, what likely enhancements might the city be able to achieve with the funding that is loosely proposed to be about $140,000? And what time frame might that involve, please?
Mr Colgan or Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The city has prepared a concept plan for upgrades to the Moresby Street local centre, including various improvements such as new pedestrian and alfresco spaces, tree planting, public benches, bike racks and general placemaking improvements. The city intends to undertake stakeholder engagement mid-year on that concept and amend the design if required in response to any feedback received. Implementation will be subject to council adopting a budget allocation for the project, and works would commence in the later part of 2025 to early 2026, subject to a budget allocation, procurement and contractor availability.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillors, Councillor Navard?
Just one more. This relates to the George Street shopping precinct at Lansdowne Street. The tubs of plants at the George Street shopping precinct are in need of some gardening attention. Is this an activity the city can undertake because of the general neglect creating a poor impression overall for the precinct? and currently it presents an uninviting location for community members. So I was just wondering about whether that is something the city can take on.
Mr Colgan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The planter boxes were initially installed for the shop tenants with the understanding that they'd be responsible for the maintenance. For this reason, the city has not been maintaining them, and greater priorities that require deployment of city resources. The city can contact the shop tenants and ask if they're going to maintain them or not. Otherwise, we can remove them.
Thank you, Mr Colgan. Councillors, any further questions for the administration this evening? No. Okay. All right. That brings us to item 14, which is new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of the meeting, but that's nil for this evening. Item 15 is meeting closed to the public, if there was any reason for us to do so, but there's not, so we won't. And that brings us to item 16, which is closure. So before I close tonight's meeting, I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance and participation. I declare the meeting closed at 7:55 p.m. Thank you all and good night.